If you want to buy a gravel bike, well, you've basically got two options. You can buy a super capable adventure bike.
Or you can buy a gravel race bike for speed.
Now, I know what you're thinking. They do just look like bikes, but there are some very key differences. My adventure bike has a comfier riding position. It also has easier gears for getting up very steep climbs. And there are loads of cool frame mounts. I could literally pack the kitchen sink.
The Liam's bike is generally going to be heavier and that more upright ride position is going to be a bit slower. The gravel race bike is all about speed. So I've got aero tubes, harder gearing, and it comes with an unhealthy disregard for your personal safety.
So, what sets these apart, and crucially, which is right for you? Well, seeing as it's a very nice day, let's go for a nice bike ride where we can dive into the similarities, the differences, and then I will run you through a great and simple way to check which gravel bike you should buy. But first, thanks to today's sponsor, Trek, for providing us with their latest checkpoint and brand new Checkmate bikes.
Now my gravel bike has loads of snazzy aero-optimized tubes to help me go faster. Now, they're not going to make as much of a difference as simply optimizing your position. We proved that in the wind tunnel last year. But if going fast is your primary objective, those tubes are the aero icing on the go fast cake. Just check out the frame design. It's way deeper and more angular than the tubes you'll find on most adventure bikes. The intention is to reduce drag, which is the enemy of speed. If going fast is your primary objective, then the gravel race bike is for you.
But aero isn't reserved for gravel race bikes. An adventure bike can have some aero touches, but mostly the tube shapes are designed for compliance and comfort, helping you to ride for longer. And that brings me on to my next point. An adventure bike is designed for seeing the beautiful countryside, not whizzing past it. On this frame, you'll find a taller front end, and the whole vibe will be a little bit more relaxed, or slack, if you will. It's a nice place to be on long rides, but crucially, it also gives you a load of control on tech stuff. Because let's be honest, crashing isn't really that fun.
Once again, my gravel race bike is optimized for efficiency. So the front end is a little bit lower and the bar's a little bit narrower to tuck me out of the wind. The stem is also a little bit longer to calm down the handling when I'm riding at furious high speeds.
There are also a host of smaller details to notice on this frame, and for me, the mounts are crucial. I've got loads with mounts on the top tube, the down tube, the underside of the bottom bracket, fork legs, and mudguard mounts. Poor old Jack barely has anything on his race bike, but that is because you generally carry a lot less in a gravel race. I've also got extra compliance built into the rear end of the bike through the decoupler system. Now, I'm not about to suggest that it does anything like what a rear shock does on a mountain bike, but it adds a little comfort, which on a long day, I'll gladly take.
Now Liam's bike also has internal routing for a dropper post, which is a feature I love on an adventure bike, because if you want to get extra rad on rowdy terrain, it'll let you put your weight down lower, move the saddle out of the way, and get further back on the bike for big sends.
Damn dog keeps barking.
Race bikes are also generally quite a bit lighter than an adventure bike. So if your idea of a nice ride involves plenty hills, the gravel race bike is for you.
Oh, but what's actually adding weight to an adventure frame? Well, the extra comfort features like the decoupler here and the frame mounts will add a bit. But mostly just everything on an adventure bike will be a bit more robust in its build. So everything from the wheels up to the saddle will be able to handle rougher trails.
Does weight really matter though? Maybe if you're a fast racer or you are just simply a weight weenie, but for most of us regular riders, I think there are more important things you should focus on.
The main difference between our bikes comes in the tyre width that you can fit.
And that does a huge amount in determining the sort of terrain a bike is suitable for. Liam's bike can fit chunky 50mm wide tyres, whereas mine is limited to 45.
But Jack's bike is designed for racing, and the current pro trend sits between somewhere like 40 to 45mm width. Basically, don't let him blame his tyres for a bad race performance. The simple way to look at this is that my wider tyres open the bike up to gnarlier trails. In fact, you really have to get onto some pretty steep stuff before this can't be ridden. While the race and adventure bikes do have some differences, they do have some things in common. And the first thing that I want to touch on is integration.
Weirdly, we're now seeing a feature on adventure bikes that we used to only ever see on aero race bikes. And that is integrated front ends. These may look cool, but position changes are difficult, adjustability is problematic, and if you have anything go wrong on a big, long, adventurous ride, the chances of finding spare parts are little to none.
It is a bit weird if you ask us, but at least some brands do it well, routing the cables under the bar and stem like I've got here.
Now, suspension has been creeping into the gravel world, and loads of bikes, both race and adventure bikes, now have the ability to fit a bouncy fork. Now, the travel a dedicated gravel fork gives you is limited compared to a mountain bike fork, but both gravel racers and adventurers have been seen repurposing mountain bike forks on mountain bikes with drop bars or on gravel bikes, so definitely a cool trend to look out for.
I personally am a bit of a fan of gravel suspension, having tried it last year, but I know that it's not for everyone. So if you are a fan, or if you're not, let me know in the comments. There are also more similarities than differences in the gearing these days. Most gravel bikes use one-by gearing these days, and a lot of racers are using wide-range cassettes when they would have been reserved for adventure bikes in the past.
There are some small differences. You'll tend to see more of SRAM's Axis Eagle mountain bike components on adventure bikes, whereas 2x is pretty much only ever seen on gravel race bikes these days.
Really though, a good rule of thumb is that the widest cassettes are best for adventure riding, where you need a good spread of gears, while a race bike that doesn't really need that much range can fit a tighter cassette, and you can get more even cadence jumps. All right, I've dropped Jack off and come back to the studio because I want to, well, shed some light and add some colour to the debate about whether you should buy a gravel race or gravel adventure bike. Given that you might be dropping a few grand on one and the lines between the two categories might be quite blurry, I think this quick check is important to do. So if we take the most common features of a gravel bike like speed, weight, tyre clearance, etc., they're just up here. All you need to do is pop these 7 categories in order of importance to you and then give them a rating of 1 to 5 based on how much you kind of care about them. So I care most about speed, so I'll give that a 5, and you can go all the way down to carrying capacity and like dropper post, which I don't really care about because I don't really go bike packing. Just give each score to the bike that does better in that category, and well, there you go. While I've been riding the adventure bike to date, the race bike is actually better for me. It's a pretty good way of deciding between 2 bikes if you're a bit stuck. Give it a go, add in your own categories if you think of more, and let me know if you find it useful. And if you want to know about the brilliant problem with SRAM's new gravel group set, click on that video. As ever, please like the video if you found it useful, subscribe, and we will see you next time. Goodbye.